Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you're well. Um, so here I am back, and I just, want to talk a little bit about my childhood, my teenage years, very briefly, in the sense of where I was at. I went from a really happy childhood. I had a very, very happy childhood. Except my dad died when I was 12. 7 days later, I was 13. Came into my teenage years and was trying to find my place in the world. I'd been in the same school from the age of 5 until 16. And that was literally my foundation in my life. Like, that was, as well as obviously my home. But I personally got so much out of that school. I felt like we were one big family. We weren't that big a school, and most people were related to each other in the school. I mean, like, where I came from, everyone had lots of siblings, so everyone went to the same school. So it just was, it was very intimate, and everyone knew everyone, and it was lovely, and it was in a beautiful setting, beautiful grounds. In where the abbey was, actually that abbey is where Mother Teresa was a novice. She was a Loreto nun originally, and then she set up her own order, the Missionaries of Charity. But she went to study there, and she was a novice nun in Loreto Rathfarnham. Loreto Rathfarnham was the first Loreto in the world, and it's where my mum went and my grandmother went. So, and I went, so it kind of went through the generations. They went to slightly different schools within the grounds. So there were several schools in the grounds, and primary and secondary, private, non-private, boarding, etc. So it was my area. I come from a lovely area. Again, like most people all over the world, most people grow up in an area where maybe one of the parents grew up. So there's kind of a history, and neighbours know neighbours, and people know each other. And my mum grew up in Rathfarnham, where my school was. And I grew up in an area, I think when my parents bought the house, it was called Churchtown, and then the address changed to Dundrum. So that's basically, my village was a small little village, really nice. Churchtown was a small place. Rathfarnham was a small village. Everywhere there was fields originally. I walked through fields to school. It then became, when I was 8, a shopping centre. But I always say, I grew up like Little House on the Prairie. I really enjoyed my childhood. I loved my childhood. I was very blessed. I was very fortunate to feel safe and loved. And there was always another part of me that felt separate as well, that felt like I was literally on the outside looking in. I didn't feel necessarily part of my family, in the sense of, I knew I was, but there was part of me felt they were all, older, and my sisters and brothers were going to discos when I was still very young, and they hung around with each other. All their friends knew each other and stuff like that. And so they were like a little bit older, and the way when you're younger, age really matters. I had my cousin on one side of me who was my friend, and I had lovely neighbours on the other side, and we were kind of friends / I babysat for them, and they were just lovely. They moved in when I was 3, and we were like family as well. I mean, they just felt like family. I used to go in, and I loved going into them for dinner, and they couldn't get rid of me. Once I was in there, I didn't want to come home. I loved being in there with them. There were 3 girls and a boy, and we just, it was just a lovely place to be. And then the next place, there was a boy my age, and then there was as I said, my cousin was the other side, and then there was another boy the other side, and we were all kind of around the same age. And then across the road there were people, a couple of people my age. One unfortunately passed away there a couple of years ago, and he was the most beautiful, beautiful boy. He was my age, and I still see him as a beautiful boy. But so growing up, it was lovely. Like the neighborhood was very friendly. It was very safe. We had a local shop just across the road, was always being robbed. My sister, I think three of my sisters, or maybe two of them, worked there. And yeah, the local church was in Dundrum, and then the church that was connected to my school was in Churchtown, the Good Shepherd, and that was the one where I made my communion, confirmation, and all of my school things were there. And then Dundrum would have been every Sunday, went to Mass with my family there, and then for Lent and things like that, and Easter. I was in the school choir. I loved singing. I loved drama. I did drama, and I did singing as well. And I did singing outside of school, but we had an amazing choir in my school. And the nun, Sister Margaret, when you look back, I mean, she was amazing. She was just amazing. I don't know how she got people to look at her the way we looked. We didn't look away from her. And when I went to my other school after that for 5th and 6th year, I was that choir. She was amazing. Her husband was blind and taught opera singers and everything. So they were amazing, teachers. And she taught in my school and privately as well. But she didn't have the attention of the students. The students didn't look at her. It wasn't as strict. Whereas my first school was very strict. If a teacher walked into the class, you stood up. We were very, very respectful. We had to be. It was just the way we were brought up within the school. And then, so, then I had the few friends I met at home as well. And I suppose I drifted then from, some people, and then I was friends with a few people in school as well. And I used to go to art classes with one girl. Her mum was a teacher actually, and her mum used to pick us up in her little brown Mini and bring us on Saturday to art classes. I was around 8 at the time. I did loads of stuff. I did tennis, I did Irish dancing. My mum was amazing. Whatever I wanted to do, she let me do. It never lasted. My Irish dancing lasted a few classes, I'd say. My singing didn't. It would last, and then I'd stop, and then I'd start somewhere else, and things like that. My drama, I loved drama, but stopped the drama. So I kind of stopped and started tennis. I was afraid of the ball. In school, I played basketball. I was kind of good at getting the ball in, but I wasn't good at catching it because I was afraid. So yeah, I just, I have amazing memories of that school. There's so many, I'll bring them up again, just so many fabulous memories. And the people there, and I know some of them might be watching this, but they were my family. Like, they were my sisters, really. And that felt so safe for me and solid. And it's like I had roots. And they were, years later, when I would be going through really tough times, which I will go into, I used to dream about school, my primary school, that I was in the school. But I dreamed that I was there and there was no one else there, and I was looking for everybody, and I wanted it to go back to the way it was. The teachers there, I know some of them were really strict and some of them really were not nice to some of the girls. But I loved all the teachers. And I think for me, it was a place I got attention, and I got attention for being good. So I tried to be good. I was a chatterbox and I giggled, and I had the best laughs I've ever had in my entire life in school. And And I still see those people today. And it's funny how, I'll explain why I drifted from my primary school friends, because they came into secondary with me. And I'll go into that, in a little bit. I'm getting a bit emotional about that. A lot has been coming up for me because I've been hesitating about continuing my memories, in the sense of, I have just such amazing, funny times in my life. I'm talking like, when I was 21 and I went on a trip, and I was, 17, and we all went down the country, in with school, and we had such fun, and I've loads of amazing memories. And I do have a good memory. And people wonder, how do you remember names, and I don't remember anything today, like names and everything else I'm really bad for, but I remember all the names from years ago. And I remember, my head wasn't as full then. So I could fit it all in and it stuck. Whereas now I just can't ram anything else in. And I'm hoping by doing this, it will release some space in my brain, because I've been carrying so much of this stuff. And I think for me, I want everyone to know how much genuinely I loved them, and love them, but loved them, and how important they all were in my life, and there's so many, different things. As I said, there was, sorry, my arm is really sore. Been doing a lot today. So for example, there were so many things, like, say, there was Donna. We used to have lunch with her and we'd bring our dolls in. I think I've said that. There was Emma, and she had her imaginary friend, and I believed her imaginary friend, and she used to tell me about him. I always thought she would end up a famous writer. I was quite close to her as well. It's funny how you're just really, really close, and yet after school there's no contact. I find that very sad and very bizarre about life. And I know there is a group of girls that do stick together, and they're very blessed, and they're like sisters, and they are sisters, and they're very close. And some of them like me and some of them don't like me. And the ones that don't like me, I genuinely don't know why. I know I must have done something on them, because I was pretty close to some of them, and then they just kind of ignored me a little bit. And I know I must have met them somewhere some night, maybe drunk, said something. I don't know. But, if anyone knows who you are, who I'm talking about, please let me know what I've done wrong, because I don't know, genuinely. So anyway, then there was the girl, Catherine, who I'm still in touch with, and she used to bring her tortoise in, and her tortoise obviously was old, and she'd bring her tortoise in, and she had her friend, I think her best friend at the time was a girl called Audrey, and she was very kind to animals as well. And she'd bring in her tortoise anyway, and she had it for years, and her dad used to put it away to hibernate. So we knew all about, like the process. It was so exciting. I think she only brought it in like, once maybe a year, once or twice a year. And then her dad would very carefully put it away. And after her dad died a few years ago, they put it away to hibernate, and unfortunately they didn't do it the right way, and the tortoise died. So he had done it to a certain way his whole life, and then he got sick and died, and obviously maybe he didn't really pass down, or they didn't ask him what to do, or they thought they knew what he was doing and he thought they knew what he was doing. But I found that very sad. I only found that out recently, that the tortoise had died, because they can live till they're 100, I think. I don't know how old the tortoise was, but So, and then her friend Audrey, I remember we tried to save all these birds. And I don't know if people remember, but there were so many seagulls in our yard in school and crows and everything. And I was always trying to save them if there was something wrong with them. And yeah, so that was just, all of that is just, thank God for me, all of it's good. There was a girl that she was my nemesis, is that what you call it? And we used to, I don't know if we were very similar, or I said this before, she reminded me of my brother. I absolutely adored her, and she just didn't like me. I don't know if she loved me, or maybe my brother loved me. I don't know, but they didn't like me, and all I wanted was them to like me. And and then we'd be brilliant friends again, absolutely best friends again. And then something would happen and there'd be an argument and we'd both be crying. And I remember everyone knew. I remember being really embarrassed about that, because it would be like, oh, here we go again. And oh, I might say something like, I like your hair. And she'd just start crying and say, she said my hair was horrible and la la la. And I'd be like, no, I didn't. And then she'd say, no, she's lying. And oh my God, it was just so distressing for me. I really, because all I wanted was peace, and all I wanted was for us to get on. And I actually had this thing about her that I really felt sorry for her all the time. And I wanted to take care of her and look after her. And I do believe to this day that she did need taking care of and all of that. But she didn't let you in. She didn't let me in. And then she changed school. And yeah, so, and that's very sad, because she recently passed away, which had an effect on me. Really just took the sail out of my winds, just shock, really, and then there were a few others. A girl, there's a few people have died that I was in school with, but so that was that. And then the area you walk through where the school was, and then you go through fields, and then you get to another huge area where everyone lived. So they lived in those two areas, and then there was me who was slightly outside, and then obviously there were other people who were slightly outside, but it was just all these big families and everyone knew everyone. And that's what I love about the area. Then you get to a stage then where you kind of, you're older, and you go to the pubs and nightclubs and you see everyone, and then you kind of have a new kind of bond, and then you see them in shops, and then you might start working with them and all that. And I loved all that. I have a big need to belong, huge need. I have to have that sense of belonging. And I find that because of my personality, I love traveling, and I love changing jobs, and I love doing new things and trying new things, that when I get that sense of belonging, then I move on. And it's probably not great for me, but it's good in one way and not in another. So then, I went from my non-private school. This is important to say. This is my non-private school to my private school. And that was, I wanted to go to a mixed school up in Sandyford, and my mum didn't want me with boys, but that's what I wanted so much. So my mum decided, and I was delighted in one way to go to, I always wanted to go, well, I actually wanted to go to the boarding school that was in the convent. I wanted to live in I actually wanted to be a nun. Yes, I know, really weird to hear that, but I really wanted to be a nun. So I wanted to live in the convent, and I wanted to be in boarding school. It was a bit weird like that, like when parents would threaten you with, like, we're going to send you to boarding school. I'd be like, oh, oh, are you? And they go, no, we're only joking. I'd be so disappointed. But anyway, so I went to the private school and I thought, well, this is going to be good. And my school was closing. There was a reason to it, to be very honest. It wasn't that like I was just moving. It was because my school was closing. Um, they they weren't doing certain subjects. They were, it was the last 2 years. I know my year were the last class, the last leaving certificate and last, year in the school or whatever. And in that way, it was amazing because there was only a few of them, only a few teachers. They almost got one-to-one education. They became very, very close. And close with the teachers, close with each other. They got an amazing education and it was just really good for them. Now that's my take. They could tell you differently. So I go off. Now a few of us went to different schools, like there was a few of them went, to local schools at that stage. A few of us left. And I remember there were certain subjects, we'll say like home economics, biology, there were certain things that they weren't going to continue within the school because there were too few people. And that was okay. And I went from being seen as poshy and snobby, and that's what I was called. I mean, I was so used to it, it didn't matter, to being called, this was horrible. I went to the other school and they started calling me like a knacker, which in Ireland just means, or maybe like chav, or I don't know what you'd say, white trash. I don't know. But it's not nice anyway. And they were horrible. And I'd never experienced that in my entire life. Like I'd never experienced ever, ever, ever experienced people in my own class being bitchy. Ever. It never existed. People might say something smart. I'd never experienced it. So people were whispering and it was horrific. And I would have been 16 and I would have turned 16, and this was September, you start school, and I would have turned 17 in the November. And this was just so, I never felt, obviously I had these insecurities and everything that teenagers have. My God, I never knew I had insecurities like the way I had them until I went there. And so now, for me, I had lost my dad. I had lost my foundation, which was my big family, which was my original school people and teachers and all of that. I mean, literally, the teachers were like my mothers for years. They were like parents to me, or big sisters or something. And then I went into this place where the teachers didn't know me. Like in the other school, your teachers knew no matter what you did wrong or giggled or you were naughty or whatever, they excused it because they knew you were a good person, because they knew your family, they knew your sisters, they knew what they'd always say, oh, your sister would never do that, and oh, your sister was such a good girl, and you were compared, but they knew you were actually fundamentally a good person. Whereas this new school, I went into, after my exams from my old school, I went into all top honours subjects. All my subjects were top honours. There was ABC and I was like A or whatever. And then, so I was in the top of the top honours. And very quickly, I just kept going down, 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 down. I had nothing to hold on to. I didn't have a close friend. I didn't have, there's just that sensitivity, knowing people hadn't got my back, knowing the teachers didn't know me. So I didn't feel that safety around the teachers. There was one teacher in particular that I loved, and she was an English teacher, and I loved English, and I was really good in English. And God bless her, her child, I don't know, I think it might have been a daughter, was very young, and she had cancer, I think leukemia. And so she was constantly out. and I missed her. She was kind of the only one I kind of felt I could talk to. My art teacher was horrible. Oh my God, she was just like, when you look back now, you think these people had problems, you know. Um, like, she was just horrible. When I think that she was only in her 20s and she was a total bitch to me. Um, and then, and I mean, it was uncalled for the way she treated me. And I remember that I became friends with this lovely girl, Anne Marie. There was a few of them. There's Anne Marie, Louise, Susan, who, God bless her, is dead now. And there was Katrina. And, you know, I did eventually make lovely friends there. And we were they were just gorgeous, down to earth, lovely people. And, you know, they were kind of like my old crowd, if you know what I mean. And, but they were real kind of Rathfarnham people, you know. And so I just felt very wobbly in the beginning of that. And then to add to that, my first friend I made there was a girl who came from Churchtown, and she wasn't very popular, and she kind of came to me, introduced herself, and I was grateful that she did, but I kind of knew she wasn't for me, if that made sense. I just knew. Anyway, she was a nice girl. We became friends. And she was very insecure, so she used to tell me stuff. And I was really innocent at this stage. And like most girls are. And she made out that she wasn't. Now, whether she was or she wasn't, I don't know. But it made me feel, oh my God, like I'm abnormal. Oh God, like, you know. And I was really shy around boys and everything else. Really, really shy around boys. And so that brings me back to a story that when I was, so now that's when I was 16 and I started school, right? And it's very significant because I started school in September, and then the October is kind of the Halloween period and stuff like that. So I still hadn't ever had a drink at this stage. I'd never tried alcohol. But when I was 14, I was with my other friends from the area, and we used to, I don't know why, but we used to, and it was October again, it was just before Halloween, and we decided to walk around this area called Ballantyre, which is probably a 15-20 minute walk. And I don't know what we were even doing up there, but we were walking around anyway. I think teenagers do that. Do they just walk the roads? I don't know. And we were walking around and we heard this ghetto blaster, and we met these two guys, and one of them was really, really drunk, and the other one didn't seem that drunk. They were around if I was 14, around 17. I think one of them was 17 anyway. And this guy, I thought, God love me, I thought I was a rocker because I had long hair and long skirt and the long coat, and we were kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, kind of like, so it looked sort of like a 60s or 70s person. I don't know what I looked like, but like a hippie or something. But we thought we were rockers because I was into Whitesnake and Halloween and all these kind of things. And this guy was playing The Cure. And I'd never heard The Cure. And of course, I instantly was drawn to this guy, and he was Cure head. And I was like, oh my God, he's gorgeous. I'm just, oh my God. And he was quite rude. And anyway, then I decided I love The Cure. The Cure are my favorite band. That continued, by the way, because I do love The Cure now, and I've always loved The Cure. I love Robert Smith, which is why my last dog was called Bobby, after Robert Smith, the singer. So that went on, and we started hanging around with a couple of them, and all that led to me hanging around the bowling alley in Dundrum and going to the local disco called Wesley and being bullied by lots of girls. Well, bullied by one girl, which led to, I'm not exaggerating, they were like a swarm of bees. One person said one thing, and then there was like 50 of them around you. So I realised that that area, like Ballantyre, you've got loads of different areas in Ballantyre, but it was all young people, and there was gangs of people, and they just hung around in gangs, and some were really nice gangs and some were not so nice gangs, and there were just gangs of people. And then there were other gangs in Sandyford, and then there were other gangs in like, just Dundrum and wherever. There were just gangs. And there was only me and my two friends at this stage. I think we had the other two friends, but they kind of went off and they were doing their own thing, probably a bit more mature than us, to be honest. But they kind of veered out into their own friendships. And then one of the girls left. So there's only me and this other girl. I won't say her name, but there was me and her all the time. And we were so kind of gentle. Like, we wouldn't be fighting, or we would certainly never start a fight. And we were actually kind of, we were nice. Like, we weren't, well, actually, she turned out to be a total bitch, but that's neither here nor there. But we weren't fighters. And there was a lot of bullying. And I remember my brother used to have to come and save me. And that I am very grateful for. I used to have to ring home and say, can you come and pick me up? I can't get away. And he'd come like the hero and bring me home. But so that was a really, 50-50, an amazing place and a really crap place to be. And it wasn't just me that was being bullied, but there was a lot of stuff, a lot of pressure going on there. A lot of people started taking drugs there, a lot of drinking behind the bowling alley, all of that. I remember I'm still not involved in any of that because I was only at this stage probably 15, 16 or something like that. I may not have even been 50, but as time went on, so we started hanging around with this guy, one of the cure head, we'll call him, right? So we started hanging around with him, his brother and his brother's friend, and his brother and his brother's friend were lovely, but this guy was taking what's it called, Tipp-Ex thinner. He'd be inhaling Tipp-Ex thinner. He was smoking cigarettes. He'd drink. And, I was in shock, but I don't know why I was infatuated by this boy. And then he was going out with a much older woman and all this. But then everyone started fancying him. And then he started going out with all these different girls. And I was mad about him. But you see, I was so shy, I wouldn't be with him. So I fancied him, but I wouldn't be with him. And then other girls would be with him. And I don't know how they meet, maybe in a disco, and then they ended. And he'd go out with somebody for a few weeks and everything else. So that went on. And then he, as time went on, then he like, I'd meet an odd person belonging to him. So I met his dad. I'd see his mum. I'd see his dad from a distance. He'd say, "There's my mum and dad." I saw his cousin, who was this awful, horrible guy. They didn't really get on. They were jealous and they were rivals or something. They didn't get on. There was some friction. I don't even think they were. I think it was the dad's cousin or something like that. I found out later. But anyway, so there were all these, you'd kind of get to know. And then I met the brother's friend. I met his sister and his parents, and they, I think they probably met my friend's parents. And so we were kind of hanging around with each other. And when I went on that exchange when I was 15, me and the other girl brought back little lighters, tiny little lighters for them. We were so happy. They had like little things written on them in French, and we explained what they were. So the first night we brought them home, they just blew them up. There were other times then, only twice I think it happened. Me and this other girl, we snuck out of my house and we'd go all the way down to Dundrum Village and meet them and sit on a wall and talk. And it could be like 2 in the morning till 4 in the morning. And literally we wouldn't do anything. We like, there was no like kissing or drinking or anything. We'd just sit on the wall, we'd talk, and then we'd run home before it would get light. And we thought this was just like amazing. Like, it was like another world being out when there was no one else out. And but I remember feeling a little bit unsafe and terrified we'd be caught. I would have been murdered by my mother. So that was that. And so I only did that about twice. So all in all, I mean, my friends, I'll be honest, my friends from the area did all start drinking around 14. And then I started smoking when I was about 15. I started smoking Consulate, these mint ones, and only an odd one here and there. And it just, if I saw guys coming towards me or something or whatever, I'd light a cigarette to be cool. I thought it looked so cool. And I really wanted to be addicted to cigarettes. I thought, I can't wait for the day that I need a cigarette. Of course, the day came. So that's just a little bit of beginning. So I kind of had now of my school, and remember, I'm in the school where I'm really grounded, and I've got great friends and all of that, and I love all of them. And then I love my home friends, and I love my family, and I love everything, and everything's okay. There is this back thing of, I'm being a little bit bullied now, remember, and my dad's dead, and they're using that as part of bullying. They're saying, no wonder he died. He, they'd say nasty things about my dad. And so this insecure, and then I'm bullied about saying I'm ugly and horrible things about me, and that all went into me. It seeped in. So now I'm 16, and that guy I was telling you about, the cure head, we'll call him, and his cousin. So you'd see everyone down in the bowling alley, literally everyone. And now I'm with my new friend from school, and the girl who she wasn't like my other friends that was real girly, giggle. She was there was something different about her. She was quieter. I don't know much about her father. She was on her own with her mom and her sister. There was something different. I can't describe it, but she wasn't girly like what I was used to. And so we hung around anyway, and she came down to the bowling alley with me one Sunday night, and it was early enough. It was with school the next day. So, but it was dark. It was October, and so we were in the bowling alley maybe for an hour, and then we were coming home. And when I say early, could have been 7 in the evening, could have been 7:30, 8, I don't know. And so we left the bowling alley and we're walking up my road. It's a very, very long road. So from the bowling alley, leads up to my house basically. And we were walking home, and the cure head's cousin pulled over in his car, and I didn't know who it was. And he said, do you want a lift? And I was like, oh no, thank you. I did not like this guy at all. He was very rough. He was just a horrible guy, and he was just horrible. Everything about him was horrible. And he said, go on, get in. And I said, no, I live just up here. And I was with my friend, and he kept pressuring us to get into the car. And my thoughts were, I'm embarrassing him in front of his friend. He had a friend in the car. I'm embarrassing him by not saying okay. He's probably trying to show off that he has a car. I may as well, I'll just get in and just let him I'd only a few houses up the road. But I said, I don't want to embarrass him. I'll just get into the car. We'll both get in, get out. I mean, there's no point in us even getting in. We'll only be in when we have to get out, but I'll do it anyway. And so we got in the back, and it's those seats. They had to get out to get us in because there were only 2 doors. And we're sitting in the back, and he's driving along, and she's saying, like, who are these? And I'm like, oh God, I don't even really know him. And he drove past my house, and I said, that's my house. And he drove faster and faster, and he said, we're taking you up the mountains. And they drove us up the mountains, and it was pitch black. I mean, really pitch black. And I'm afraid of the dark. And so he brought us up, and I remember exactly. I only remembered like a few years ago where, but you have to remember, so I'm 16. It's October. It's freezing. It's dark. I'd only kind of known this girl about a month, and so he grabbed me out of the car and very violently raped me. And the guy in the car raped my friend. And then it was just horrible. And then he threw me back into the car and grabbed her out, and he raped her. And the guy in the car started crying and said to me, pretend I raped you. I can't do this. And he just cried. And she was screaming. I mean, screaming. And I went completely silent. And they were saying that if we didn't cooperate, they were going to leave us there. I didn't know where we were. It was really dark. It seemed really far away. I now know it was only Rathfarnham Mountains, which isn't that far from where I live, but we would never have known where we were. And there weren't, now there's a new shopping centre and new roads and everything, so it was very difficult to see where you were then. I probably was never even up around that area before. So he dumped us out at my house, and I think I walked her halfway home or something like that, and we hugged each other and cried, and then we had to face each other in school the next day. And it's all a bit of a blur, but then 2 weeks, about a week later, or 2 weeks later, I don't know, it wasn't that long after, I was in the bowling alley on my own now. So I remember she had confronted the cousin's girlfriend and told her she saw her somewhere. And then he and the girlfriend tried to run me over on my road, literally drove up on the path and almost crashed into a wall and nearly jammed me into the wall. I had to jump over the wall. So I was afraid for my life. I didn't want to be at home because the feelings were just horrific. So I was in the bowling alley on my own. I didn't tell my other close friend, who I was close friends with. I didn't tell anyone. And again, it was school night, and it was early, and I was just standing there on my own. Everyone used to play these computer games. They'd sit down and play like Mario Brothers and all that, and it was just the thing that people stood behind them and watched them. That was what you did, and people were really good at it. And so I remember just standing watching people play games, and then I just left to go home. And the cure head, who I'd been friends with for years, well, friendly with, I wouldn't call him a friend, but he was the guy I fancied for years. But obviously he wouldn't go near me because I was too innocent and I was too shy. So he came after me and he said, "What are you going home now?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I heard what happened. I'm really sorry." And I said, "How did you hear?" And he said, "He told me." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, he was boasting about it to loads of people." And he said, "I don't want you walking home on your own. It's too dangerous. You just don't know who's around. I'll walk you home." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Thank you." And we were walking up my road and he grabbed me into a lane and he raped me. And I did scream, and it was horrible and it was violent. And only in the last couple of years I met a girl who lived in a house a lot in that lane, and she said she remembers that night. She could hear screams. All the neighbours heard screams, but when they looked out, there was no one there. They saw a girl running or something, or a guy running, or I can't remember. And so there was kind of this rift between the cousins. And so that guy was going crazy that the cousin had done that because he had wanted to do that. And so I remember my mum saying to me, she said to me, "Niamh, I don't want you going out anymore in the evenings. It's very dangerous. There was a young girl raped down the lane the other night, and nobody knows who it was, and she was only a young girl, and I just don't want you out. It's very dangerous." So that was the beginning of my secrets, shame. How do you tell somebody that it was somebody you said that you willingly got into a car with, or that you thanked them for offering to walk you home, and you had hung around with this person and you had fancied this person? And I went around walking on eggshells for years because everyone knew and people whispered about it, and people would say snide remarks to me and things like that, and I had to put up this wall and pretend I did not know. And that's when I started drinking on my own. I actually started drinking and I started drinking on my own in my bedroom and vomiting into a dustbin and putting it in the wardrobe. I just wanted this to go away. And that's why I pulled back from the people in my original school. I was so ashamed. I wasn't the same person they knew. I was afraid they'd find out and hate me. I was afraid I'd be judged. I just felt like damaged goods, not worthy, dirty, my fault. My mum used to always say you shouldn't be going out when it's dark. It's no good on the roads after dark. So that was the beginning of me hanging out with other people and just trying to reinvent myself the whole time with different people, hiding behind drinking and clubbing, and I was just running from then on. Never leaves you, ever leaves you. And this has been a very long video, I know that. I will continue it next time, but I just want to say that it never ever leaves you. I had to live in my area, go to the same pubs, same clubs. I ended up hanging around with the cousin's sister, because I went out with somebody and he was going out with the guy I was going out with a guy and his best friend was going out with the cousin's sister. So I was hanging around with the guy's sister. She'd talk about her brother and I'd smile and pretend, oh yeah. And I was in her house one day and he walked in, and like just all that stuff, and just pretending nothing ever happened. And it molds you into a certain way of being. I had no self-esteem now. I looked like I did, I smiled like I did, I dressed up like I did. I had no self-esteem. So it brings you on a path of like choosing different types of men, friends, just choosing a different lifestyle. It really changes you on a fundamental level. It changes your psyche. You know, it really is. It's an invasion of your spirit, of your soul, and it's dark. And yeah, I want to say, you know, that lovely girl in Australia who died by suicide recently, and there's been quite a lot over the years, the suicides and overdoses and things like that, and there's been there's a lot of abuse, an awful lot of abuse in the world. A lot of people have been abused. It used to be 1 in 4, now they say 1 in 2. So I just want to say, you know, it's still there. It never leaves you. It's still there. Like what that did to me made me make certain choices in my life, and those choices changed me. And those things that changed me made me make other choices, so it's just this cycle. And I couldn't go to the police because the cure head's father called to my house. One day I was in my uniform, I was minding my 3 nieces, and he called to the door and he said, I want to speak to you. And I said, what? And he said, I want you to come over, get into my car. He grabbed me out of the house by the wrist and he dragged me across the road to the shops, put me in the car. My 3 nieces are in the house now, door open. And he said, if you ever tell anybody about this, I'll burn your house down and kill your family. And I believed him. I was afraid. I was so petrified. Well, first I wouldn't tell people. Well, I don't know whether I would have gone to the police or not. I don't know. It was very quickly that he came to the house. So I didn't even have, I was in a kind of whirlwind of just hiding. And my friendships all changed after that because I wasn't the same open kind of girl. I just felt worthless. And yeah, I can't describe it. It's just, you get this feeling that you're just, it's this darkness in you all the time, and you can't get rid of it no matter what you do. You try everything and it doesn't work. So it is life changing forever. I lived in the area. Um, I had to face his his daughter did my mum's hair for the last few years, and my mum used to say she's a beautiful, like, you know, lovely girl, and mum used to tip her, and the girl, of course, didn't know anything, and I had to have to go in and pay for my mum's hair, or I'd have to go in and book my mum's, or call up, and she was just so nice to me and a really nice girl. And then I used to have to go over to the post office and get mum's money, because I'd either go with mum, and then when she got unwell, I had to go and face his wife all the time. I had to face his wife, and pretend. Mum used to say, "Oh, she's a lovely girl," and there's no escaping it. There's no escaping it. Um, it's there all the time. You pass places. Everything reminds you. You see the brother. You see the father. You just songs on the radio. Like, I mean, you know, I remember around that time just being everything was very dark, and I was very depressed, and I'd only started drinking, so I wasn't even used to alcohol, and I was just drinking messily and crying, and everything was dark, and and then my schooling. So now you know why I start school, a new school. I'm in 5th year, all top honours. The world is my oyster. The girls were, in the most part, the girls were bitches, but then I did meet a lovely group of friends. They never knew any of this. Nobody knew. The girl who I was with, who I'd made friends with, her sister beat me up in the changing room because she told her what had happened or something. And then, anyway, with a few things happened, and that girl who I made friends with, she had been in that school since she was like very young, and she was expelled, all because of what happened, all this stuff. It's all a commotion. She was in the office and she was screaming at me, and there was a lot going on. And so then she was thrown out. So then I had 2 years of that school, of being this low self-esteem, not fitting in, not feeling part of, not having that security, hiding from my mum, started drinking, no interest in school at all, no interest in life. So that's what happened to me. So I'm going to go now because I'm nearly an hour here. So I just want to share that and explain that it really does change your life. And I will go from that next time. So thank you for bearing with me. If you've stayed till this long time, 58 minutes, thank you so much. God bless everybody. Take care. Bye.